Starks.
Lannisters.
Dragons.
Lend us your ears. Welcome back to the channel. Today we are doing a video that we have long promised those who have been watching the channel, and that is a chat about A Game of Thrones, the first book, and also the adaptation, season 1 as well. I had never read or watched anything in Game of Thrones.
It's a pretty niche fantasy series.
Yeah, I'm not sure if you've heard of it.
Have heard of it. I think it's going to be big.
Yeah, we just want to give it a spotlight because obviously, like, there's so many books out
fantasy it just isn't talked about enough, is it?
It isn't really. It really isn't. So maybe you've not watched the season or heard of it either. But so I had never watched or read either until a few months ago, and then I read this for the first time, and I watched the season for the first time. You reread A Game of Thrones and watched it again.
Yeah, I read it back.
So we've got the seasoned veteran,
yeah,
and then we've got the newbie talking about it. So hopefully this is going to be quite an interesting video as you kind of see the different thoughts of someone who's going through it all again, and then me who just I have had a few spoilers that I know about over the years because obviously it is so iconic, especially for a self-pub series, as you said. Yeah. It's such an iconic book and season that you do hear some spoilers, which is a shame. But we won't talk about
those people who spoiled it for you. Why?
Yeah, I wonder who that was. But yeah, we won't have any spoilers in this video. But first up, let's talk about obviously the more interesting of the two,
the series. Book. I'm joking.
Okay, the book. So first up, shall I kick off, or do you want to?
It is World Cup season. I'll let you kick off.
Thank you, Ed. So A Game of Thrones, I absolutely adored the book. I mean, I am a figures information guy. I love the Silmarillion.
Stats, family trees.
Exactly. So
what the hair colour is, the age. William will just eat that up.
Exactly.
So this is the series for you.
It is. So Game of Thrones, whilst in some ways is similar to the Silmarillion in terms of you get a deep dive into all the histories of the family. Some people might see that as a bit info dumpy, but I thought it's done in a really refreshing way where it really just makes the world feel alive and vivid and just a living, breathing thing. But also, of course, the strength is the characters and the political intrigue and how these events unfurl and the twists and turns along the way. Absolutely brilliant cast of characters. There's a few POVs who I didn't quite click with, but it's one of the series that I can't think of anything else which is like that. Even if you don't click 100% with the POV, they've got so many interesting and well fleshed out characters that are sometimes an enigma. They've got mysteries and you're slowly finding out about them. They're so interesting that no matter who you're following, there is a cast of characters who are really engaging to follow. You hate them, you love them, you're in the middle, you're deciding whether to love them or hate them. You've got a whole mix there, and this is a gritty world where everyone is out for themselves. There's a very, very few people who are there who, to be honourable, very few indeed, and it seems like the odds are set against them when they are. Ned Stark, what a man. What a guy. Do you want to talk about your thoughts?
Yeah, I think the book was... I reread this when I was first watching Game of Thrones. I think season 3 had just come out, so I thought I'd give it a read. And I didn't enjoy the book as much then because I think I was so wrapped up in the series. I absolutely adored the series. And I was like, how could Jon Snow not have a beard in the books? No, that's obviously not the reason. But yeah, I just felt like I really enjoyed the series a lot more. I don't know why. Maybe it's just because it's such a big book and it was, the series is much faster paced, that kind of thing. But I do think rereading the book, I really enjoyed it. I think it's I don't know. I'm a bit conflicted with the book, to be honest. I think there are great moments. There are fantastic bits. There are bits the book does better. There are bits the series does better. I think probably the book holds up a little bit better than the series does in terms of the character, the moments, the payoff, and the tension that you have. But same goes for the series as well. But I think, probably I do prefer the book. That it edges it over the series for me. I think the book has better moments. For example, the very opening scene is much better. The dialogue in the book is supreme. I think some characters like Tyrion are better in the series. But I do think, the dialogue is absolutely fantastic in the book. George R. R. Martin, that's my favourite aspect of his writing. I think when he introduces a character and he lists how old he is, what colour hair he has, what his eyes look
fantastic.
like. Is he right-footed, left-footed? Does he like dancing, that kind of thing? I think there is just too much, and it does get bogged down with the details. And I wasn't a big fan of the writing style. You're
going to have your fancy reading licence stripped from you, and I am happy to be the enforcer.
I disagree. I don't think so.
I mean, who thinks Ed should have it taken from him?
Not me.
Right.
But Yeah, I think I really enjoyed the book. I think some of the characters are just fantastic. Obviously, George R. R. Martin's created an amazing world here. It is essentially York versus Lancaster, the 100-Year War. But obviously, we love being inspired by historical periods. So I absolutely love that George R. R. Martin took some historical inspiration there and then chucked in a few winged reptiles in for good measure. But the one thing that I think makes Game of Thrones stand above many other series is the way that you can get immersed in the history, that it has this whole mythology and history behind it. It's so well thought out. It's why it has such a huge fan base, such as Lord of the Rings. Lord of the Rings has all that back catalogue, basically, doesn't it? Of history. And reading this, you don't need to know about the history, but the history within here, you just feel like this is a lived and breathed in world, that the people are so real. And that is one thing that I think Game of Thrones, the book, does amazingly well. And it is why it's so popular. This is the thing, I think, the reason why the First Law isn't as popular, because it hasn't actually got that back catalogue, that feeling that it has been lived in, and that there is so much to get immersed in. You know, like Harry Potter, you might like different parts of Harry Potter, but, you know, you might prefer... Let's say you got the 4 houses. Yeah. You could choose what house you want to, because there's such a wide range. You might think, I want to be the bad guy, the dark guys. You might like Slytherin, blah, blah, blah. But within Game of Thrones, you've got that and more. You've got all the different houses. You want to get behind them. So you're supporting someone as well. It's like you're choosing your football team, isn't it?
Yeah, we were talking about in that chat about immersion, weren't we? And there's obviously the First Law, one of our favourite series, one of yours, one of mine. But I think the things that Lord of the Rings and Game of Thrones, and I've not read it, but what I hear about the Wheel of Time is that you can have read all the books multiple times and still not know everything about it, and pick up more every single time. Big as well. Malazan as well, where all of that history, where it feels real, and you can really just get obsessed with it and live and breathe.
There's so many aspects of it to love. You've got the battles, you've got you've got the political intrigue, you've got the characters, you've got the history, you've got the fantasy creatures as well.
Yeah, I was going to say, so how can we not talk about the political intrigue in the Game of Thrones? I think it's the best political intrigue in any books I've ever read.
It's like Housewives, like the Housewives programs, isn't it? But
something that maybe rivals it slightly as Wolf Hall by Hilary Mantel, and that's incredible, the political intrigue. But this is on a far wider scope, and I think I prefer this because you see it from loads of different perspectives, and there's some people who aren't pulling the strings that are affected by it as well. You have that full range, and also I was going to say there's a lot of children as some of the main POVs here, and it doesn't feel childlike at all. But there's so many books where you have a child as a main character, but they just feel like an adult in a child's body, don't they? But these children, they feel absolutely like children, where they have agency, but they also feel like children. Is an amazing feat that George R. R. Martin has done here. Like, you see that the motivations for these characters are different and much more simpler than adults would be, but they still manage to do some things that alter the plot, and it still makes them really interesting to follow. And a lot of them are pawns in a greater game of chess being played by these factions. And I just thought how it all comes together in that political intrigue, all the twists and turns along the way, but also how George R. R. Martin, he gives you enough that you feel the tension, you feel how things are going to turn out, and then he subverts them and takes them in a completely different direction. But it's where he's given you all the pieces to connect it and know where it's going to go, but it's just so clever that you don't, or at least we haven't. I know that millions of other people had no clue either. So I think that's another extraordinary thing about Game of Thrones. And this is one of my favourite books of all time because of it. But now let's talk about the series.
Yeah, the series, I think I was shocked by how much the series has changed over time. That first season, it looked very cheap, I think, didn't it? And it didn't... Obviously, we're used to seeing productions now like House of the Dragon, Rings of Power, that kind of thing, and they don't look cheap. Rings of Power kind of does. But I think, Game of Thrones Season 1, lots of the sets were very poorly done, I think. Obviously, it's a budgeting issue, and it's a very expensive series. But you've got ways around that. And I think, for example, the jousting scene, where Robert, where the Hand of the King, Ned Stark's been announced as Hand of the King, and they're doing a joust in his honour, and it looked like it was, being organised by, the local teenage gang kind of thing, wasn't it?
Yeah.
They had no money, they had to steal from chickens to fund it. So,
exactly.
Lots of stuff like that made me feel like it was a bit of poor production value, as well as some of the writers they obviously hired didn't do a good job. Because there are scenes here that they added in the series Some of them were fantastic.
Oh, some of them were some of the best scenes in the entire show.
Lots of them were some of the worst things I've ever seen on the screen.
I mean, I have to say, Littlefinger was probably my favourite non-POV character in the book.
Yeah,
and he is one of the worst on-screen characters. I mean, it's just some of his monologues.
He does this monologue in his brothel, doesn't he?
You know the guy who
has
secrets, who doesn't want anyone to know what he's doing, so then he can. So then there's big twists about him.
Yeah.
Oh, I'm just going to tell everyone in the brothel in a monologue what I'm going to do and my motivations.
I think the beauty of Game of Thrones is the intricacies, and then in the series, the intricacies are really toned down, so the audience obviously can get behind it. But I think the series does have some amazing, powerful moments, that they did really well. For example, I think Khal Drogo is fantastic in the series, whereas
Stark.
not as good in the book. And I think there's just little characters like that. Tyrion is much better.
Peter Dinklage,
in my opinion.
What an incredible actor!
Fantastic, definitely.
And I think that brings us onto the casting. I think the actors are brilliant,
perfect,
absolutely perfect for the casting choice, but also as their skills as well.
What I love about Game of Thrones is that they hired some very veteran actors who did lots of theatre, lots of TV productions. They've been in the business for a long time, and then the younger cast,
obviously newbies.
Well, newbies. They're straight out of theatre school from London, all that kind of stuff, and they learnt from the older generation. It's like Harry Potter. You're working with Gary Oldman,
I know.
David Thewlis, Helena Bonham Carter. You're obviously going to pick up some amazing tips when you're a young actor by working with people that are at the top of their game. And obviously, working with Sean Bean and other people like that, you're going to be at the top of your game, aren't you?
Exactly, yeah. I thought that is brilliant where you've got that core. I think a lot of programmes now, whilst they can look brilliant, Rings of Power. We didn't enjoy Rings of Power, which of course is our own opinion, but I thought the acting was a bit weak, partly due to the dialogue, but I just thought the actors as well, there were no stunning performances in my mind, but Game of Thrones has that.
It's so convincing, isn't it?
Even when there's scenes where I'd say the dialogue may not have been as well written, the actors still found a way to make it just really impactful. And it sounds a bit like we're being negative about the show. I think my thing was, after hearing so many brilliant things and how obviously it's turned into one of the most successful series of all time, I was expecting season 1 to be one of the greatest things I've ever watched. It wasn't. It was still, I thought, really great.
It was the ending, isn't it?
Yeah, I thought it got better as it went on. It got more confident. But it's one of those that it's just, when you set your hopes a bit too high, where it's my fault, but it's still one that if I didn't know about how great Game of Thrones was beyond that, I would definitely have carried on if this was only the only season.
Yeah, but even watching it again, I definitely agree with you that it could have been a lot better. I know they get a lot better as well.
Yeah.
But, I mean, obviously, I always held season 1 as like, this sucked me in.
Yeah.
Like a Dyson.
Yeah, it was weird. It's like, like a Dyson.
To be honest, it wasn't as amazing as I remembered.
Yeah.
But it's still a great series compared to the likes of The Witcher, Rings of Power.
It's got those iconic,
Dragon,
really emotional moments, isn't it?
Definitely.
And characters that you actually really love.
I just wish
Jon Snow,
the score
love him.
was good. Just wish the score was good.
Oh, you don't like it, do you? But I just thought that overall the season was really good as well. It's one of the best fantasy shows out there, in my opinion, just from watching season 1. And obviously what I've heard is that it gets better because obviously it was successful.
What would you rate the book out of 5 stars?
5 stars.
And what would you rate the series out of 5 stars?
Probably 4 stars, because whilst the best moments were some of the best moments of TV I've ever watched, there are other moments which weren't so good.
Yeah, I agree. The book, even though this is the thing with multi-POV, you're always going to have POVs you don't gel with. Sansa, I would love to never read a page from her point of view.
Yeah, I do agree.
Again. But it's still a 5-star book in my opinion. The series, I would give 4.5, I reckon, because it gets amazing towards the end, and you can forgive the beginning of it's not fantastic storytelling, is it?
Yeah. Did you say you give how many stars?
5 stars, and the series 4.5. I would also
pretty
ask
positive
you,
from us.
who's your favourite character in the book?
That's hard. Favourite POV is Ned.
Yeah.
Favourite non-POV is Littlefinger.
Okay.
And you?
Favourite POV must be Jon Snow.
Yep.
Favourite non-POV must be Khal Drogo.
Cool.
Obviously.
Okay. Now 2 characters from the show. Doesn't matter if they're POV or what. Your 2 favourite characters in the show.
From the show, Robb Stark, obviously, and Bronn.
Bronn, really?
Great.
Tyrion and Robb Stark for me.
Yeah. Nice.
Tyrion was the greatest
Tyrion in the show is
character.
fantastic.
His scenes with Cersei and Jaime are so funny.
I think he actually does carry the first season, doesn't he?
Every scene he was in was just electric.
Favourite moment across the book and the series?
Okay, that's quite hard.
Only one.
But obviously we can't say spoilers.
Yeah, we can. It's Game of Thrones.
No,
I've already said spoilers.
Okay, so the spoilers from now onwards. Okay, so I'll put in the favorite moment then would probably be in the show was how they did the execution of Ned Stark. Was absolutely
you enjoyed it's
Sean
not Bean die.
I thought that scene was made in such a brilliant way.
It was a good shot.
And it made me feel utter hatred towards Joffrey in his high-pitched, stupid voice. Yeah. I hate him. I hate him. Oh yeah, of course, so much.
Joffrey, best character.
I hate him.
Yeah.
That's so hard in the book. I do really like when Tyrion does his trial and then Bronn stands forward for him.
Yeah,
that's done really well.
I think my favourite scene in the show is when Khal Drogo kills Viserys.
Crown
fucking, and then puts the gold on him. That's pretty cool. And then I think my favourite scene in the book is when it's when Jon Snow is saying goodbye to Bran and Catelyn Stark's there, and it's just. Obviously,
that's your favourite.
It's written so well.
That is nasty.
I was a bit teary. Just John, and then John sees Rob, and then Rob's like, "Was my mother nice to you?" And he was like,
"Yes,
yeah, she was very kind."
And you see how Rob really cares about John. It's so clever, isn't it? But Johnny now he's nice because he doesn't want to upset. But there we go. That is our talk about A Game of Thrones. Thank you so much for watching. Hopefully you enjoyed this chat about the book and the show. What are your thoughts? Have you read them? Have you watched them? Well, I imagine if you've gone to the spoiler part, then you have. But yeah, thank you so much for watching. If you want us to do more of these, because I've read book 2 now, so maybe if you don't read book 2, but we can talk about the show as well. Let us know in the comments below. But everyone, as I said, thank you for watching.
Truth and courage.
Winter is coming. We did not plan that, and
cool. The brothers Gwynne.